Okay. In the Zen Buddhist tradition, one of the articles of transmission for a teacher is you're given a short stick, kind of like this mic, and it's called a kotsu, and it's a teacher's stick. And then when you bow with a teacher's stick, you kind of hold it like this. I find myself doing that on Zoom, and it looks a little bit strange, but hopefully this has improved things. And we have the second mic, and I'll be sure to leave time for questions and comments, so we can have some dialogue. I'm bringing up a Zen Buddhist koan as a talking point today that deals with uncertainty, which I wonder why I picked that, right? Dealing with uncertainty. It's drawn from the book of Serenity, or sometimes translated as the book of Equanimity, a collection of Zen koans, Zen stories and recollections, teaching principles that were collected in the Song dynasty in China. In this case, somewhere around the 12th century. The book itself has an interesting history of how it came to be. The collection of koans, there's 100, was put together by a famous what we call Soto Zen, the lineage that I'm in, through Yokoji, through Tozan and Dogen, Maizumi Roshi, that lineage. He put together a collection of 100 of these koans. And then a student, a couple of generations later, put them together into a manuscript, into a book, and added a preface, which kind of frames the koan. I'll read that too. Added a preface. So you had somebody who had never met the teacher who had put these together, but saw the deep value in them, and put them together in a manuscript. And this was done at a time of great upheaval in China. The Tang dynasty had collapsed, and it was in a time of invasion, so the Mongol invasion of northern China. And so the country was in turmoil. And the Buddhist communities had lived through a time of incredible turmoil. There'd been an emperor who had basically launched a pogrom against Buddhism in China at that time. Felt that the temples had too much power and that the religion wasn't indigenous, other reasons, and had disassembled a lot of the monasteries. So that there were very few teachers and lineages that survived that. Right? So going through a real time of turmoil, the teacher who put this together, Bancho, who was brought to the capital to be the teacher of the emperor at the time, he gave one of the early manuscript to a student of his who had been assigned to the Mongol court to treat with them and to advocate for the Han Chinese, right? Which is, so he was a high-level diplomat who took with him a transcript of this book, and that was the one that survived, that transcript. It's kind of just incredible. And it's said that this the diplomat who had the koan manuscript had really advocated for Dharma practice and Dharma insight to the invading peoples, and through that had made things more smoother than they could have been. So that's just like a fascinating to me, just background to the text that survives. But the Dharma has survived in these lineages that have come down to us over more than 2,500 years at this point. right? Dealing with the rising and falling of empires and countries, and dealing with hard times and good times, and everything in between. And yet this thread of teaching has been so precious to so many people that it's able to have continued without a gap until this point where I can pick up this book now, and we can share a tale of ancient times, but that still has potency and relevance for us now as we find ourselves in our own volatile and difficult times. You know, we can turn to our practice to support us when it's most difficult. Otherwise, what use is it, right? If we're just to have like a kind of a fair weather meditation practice, right? It's like when we feel good, you know, we do some sitting or some Dharma practice, but then if circumstances become very difficult, if it drops away, then it wasn't worth so much. But the heart of Dharma, the heart of the insights gleaned from this practice, is something that can support and function as a true refuge in the midst of turmoil, in the midst of difficult causes and conditions. That's for work. That's what this is really, really about. Okay, I'm going to read it. I'll try and do that with one hand. So this is case 20 from a book of equanimity. Jizo's not knowing is the most intimate. Attention. Jizo asked Hogan, "Where have you come from?" "I pilgrimage aimlessly," replied Hogan. "What is the business of your pilgrimage?" asked Jizo. "I don't know," replied Hogan. "Not knowing is the most intimate," remarked Jizo. And at that, Hogan experienced a great enlightenment. So you may be somewhat familiar with this case. We've been sitting together for some time. It's certainly on my favorites list. It's on my playlist, this one, right? It's like a favorite koans. But it's something, it's a koan, and points to something which really cannot be exhausted. It can be revisited over and over again. If we imagine in our mind's eye how this takes place, you have a Dharma practitioner and a monk who've been at the practice of meditation and Dharma and Zen for a long years, and at this point is out on a pilgrimage visiting other teachers. There's a tradition in Zen Buddhism that when someone had perhaps finished their formal training and have some kind of accomplishment in terms of understanding, that they would go out and they'd meet other teachers and just see if they can learn, or for sure learn from other people in other ways, right? Because we can, in the Dharma world, if we just associate our practice life with one way or one teacher or one particular approach, you know, although that can be very rich, it can also leave us sometimes a little narrow or a little dependent on one person or one tradition. And we know that as everything is impermanent, it's really better to diversify one's practice into all areas of life. Right? So he goes to, in this case, Hogan. You see him; he's traveling, and he goes to see a quite famous teacher of the day, Jizo. And Jizo asks him, "Where have you come from?" Upon meeting, where are you from? Now, often in Zen Buddhism, there's the shallow and the deep are both represented in a question. Right? The shallow is the straightforward, surface kind of conversation. Where are you from? It's kind of like how are you doing? Or what have you been up to? These questions they're useful. They're a way that we connect and communicate with one another. We did that this morning. Good to see you. How you doing? How's things been? These questions that we have for connection. In one sense, they can appear quite shallow. They're just natural, conversational. But there's always depth there too. There's depth in those questions. Just to see someone. See somebody who comes in the room, a friend, or someone you haven't seen in a little while. Or to meet someone new. It's a profound experience. It's an everyday experience, but it's a profound experience. It's always new. Every time we come here, it's new. There's uncertainty, there's not knowing. I never know which room we're going to be in. I don't know if you do. I think Ian's told me about 9 times, so many times at this point, like which room we're in, which week, that I'm like, now I don't ask anymore because I'm embarrassed. Right? So it's like, but that's a simple form of kind of not knowing, but it's fine. It's like, come in, where are we today? Oh, we're here. Oh, it's a sound. Oh, we're using a sound. Oh, I've got a mic now. Okay. Simple things, and then we see one another. But these questions also, there's a hidden depth here. Where are you from? Jizo's asking. This practitioner of the Dharma, looking at him and asking, on a fundamental level, if we really go to the depths here and ask, where are you from? Originally, and obviously I'm going deeper than I'm from Wales, or I'm from Ohio, or I'm from, right? Not the story of the identity, but pointing at a really deep question, an intrinsic question. Where are you from? Where are you from? Where am I from? Where is this from? Where have you come from? Good question. Difficult to answer. We could say some things perhaps, but it points at this fact of, don't know. Don't know is never very far away. But as human beings, we like to dwell in the realm of the known. And we tend to seek certainty. And we cling to the known. And we cling to certainty. And yet, as we well understand, each one of us, the fabric of this experience of being a human being, living in this mysterious reality we call the world, the basis of it is unknown, is completely not known. Where does this come from? Where does this go? What does this mean? How curious that is. In response to this question, so Hogan gives an answer. I pilgrimage aimlessly. In another translation, it says, I follow the wind. I pilgrimage aimlessly. I follow the wind has a nice poetic kind of slight to it. There's a long tradition in China at that time and in Japan later. I think it's called, I can't remember the Japanese word, but it means to travel by foot. It's a practice to go somewhere on foot, like on a long journey. It's this kind of travel. I pilgrimage. Like in our life, well, if we look at it as the standpoint of our Dharma practice, where are we going with it? What is the destination for this practice we're involved in? Where do we go next? Right? I ask that question, I look at that for myself. I see now how that's beginning to unfold. With living at a Zen center for all of those years, and having something even of a spiritual curriculum to follow, like a formal practice to be a beginner in, and then to eventually to kind of complete, and to become certified, and to go through these different things, and then to complete a certain process, right? And it can often be a certain anchor and a certain comfort in being in the midst of something where we feel like we have an aim and a destination in mind. Right? So we're on a journey with something known, or some kind of known journey with some kind of a destination in mind. But now, as I having come down off a mountain and living down here, and fortunate to be down here in the desert, it's like, well, what's the plan now? What is the plan now? Like, what is practice? What is so-called practice? What is everyday practice out in the world? Where without titles and shaved head and the smell of incense. What is the practice then? Hogan says for him it's to pilgrimage aimlessly. That word pilgrimage is quite evocative, right, of the spiritual journey. There's many places in the world where you can go on pilgrimage. It's like something that's elevated in terms of spiritual value, something sacred. But isn't our whole life is this pilgrimage? We set out on pilgrimage when our eyes first opened into this curious world. The journey began. And we set out on this pilgrimage. But are we going? Where are we going? What is the destination? Meditation brings us face to face with the destination, the beginning point and the end point at the same time. To pilgrimage. When we take the seat, we've arrived. It might not be what we expected. Right? As human beings, we do that. We set up we set up expectations. That's a part of our functioning. That's part of our human condition. And in Dharma practice, we don't have to abandon expectations. It's not about a matter of abandoning what's known, but rather looking into the nature of what's known and looking into the limits of what's known and looking at the nature of expectation and the limits of expectation. Right? Can we be at home, genuinely at home, and take refuge in great uncertainty? That's what this is when we come in and we sit. The room's always arranged a little different. The person to our left and right changes each week. We might be a little cold or a little warm. The mind might be busy, a little sluggish, or who knows? Right? All of that phenomena, all of those causes and conditions never cease of changing. As human beings, we're very involved in these changes, trying to navigate these changes and adjust our trajectory in order to meet these changes. Right? But that also becomes tiring. And it's also, we realize that we can't control the results. That we're along for the ride in this journey, but we can't really control where it's going. To some degree, some impact, but fundamentally, no. So the practice of coming to sitting is to let go of what is known, including who we are, including the identity or the ideas around our life, people, and things. Not to forget those things, but to let go of the clinging to those things. Much better to sit and be no one at all for a while. Take a break. from yourself, from ourselves, with all our laundry list and our to-do list of worries and concerns and things to take care of. We sit, we have that opportunity to put down the pen that's writing the story and to let all things rest. For even just that 30 minutes, or even just 5 minutes of that 30 minutes. And not to arrive at a blank space of not knowing. Maybe these words never quite reach. Not knowing isn't a lack of knowledge. Or if only, maybe the answer will come to me in a minute. But the not knowing, or the uncertainty of sitting with no map and no fixed appraisal or knowledge of what is occurring, but rather meeting the world, allowing the world to meet you and unfold however it is. We can't control it anyway. But often, this is what we do, perhaps even in meditation. It's like we sit inside this vehicle that we find ourselves, and we're determined to keep a hand on the wheel. But we can really let go of that. And instead, when we sit, just be the passenger. Allow this to drive itself. And to just watch and look out of the window and see everything that appears and how extraordinary. All of everything that comes in through the senses, all of this experience. The known will attach good and bad to that, negative and positive to that, welcome and unwelcome to all of that. As we have that human condition, that preferential mind. But when we sit in don't know or not knowing, then the price of entry is to surrender the preferences and just radically be with what is, as it is. So Jesus says, what is the matter of your pilgrimage, or what is the business? Like, where are you actually going? Like, he's asking Hogan. Hogan's kind of at the end of his training, but he's still visiting other teachers. He's still checking things out. He's still testing himself against others. Why? Jesus asking. What are you going to? When's that going to end? At what point are you just actually completely at home as you are, as the person that you are, with nothing else left to seek, with nothing else left to do in this spiritual inquiry? Can you really just be who you are as you are and allow the world to be as it is? And he says, in response to what is the matter of your pilgrimage, he says, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. And Jesus says, not knowing is the most intimate. Not knowing is the closest thing. Right? Because when we know things, they're always a little at arm's length. And we have that kind of subject-object way of understanding. I know what he's like. I know what they're like. I know what this is. But we always have that kind of that idea of, based on conditioned experience. And that's useful, of course, for navigating the world. But it always leaves us a little blinkered. And it always closes off some possibilities. But when not knowing that is the most intimate thing, this is a new moment. This is a new experience. This is a new opportunity. This has never been written before. This hasn't happened before. Here we are. It's a fresh page. not knowing is most intimate. And it says there that Hogan experienced some, it says great enlightenment. When I read this some years ago, many years ago if I'm honest, right, then I would love these koans, I'd read them, and I'd read these dialogues, and it would say, and so had a great enlightenment. And I'm like, that's what I want. All I have to do is put myself in a similar position, and that's going to happen to me, and everything will be rosy. And then, like a fool, I got a visa and came on a plane out here. I went to live at a Zen center. If only it was like it was so easy. Like my ideas of these projections around, and then has this great enlightenment, and then a projection about what that means. Oh, that sounds good. Just it's fill in the blank of like what great enlightenment looks like. But there's a part 2 that comes after this koan. Hogan achieves great enlightenment, and then he leaves, he's walking out, Jizo's walking him out. And Jizo still won't let him off the hook, and he points at a large boulder. And he says, this stone, is it inside or outside of your mind? And Hogan says, inside. And Jizo says, it's going to be difficult to travel carrying that. Right? So, even after he has this wonderful insight, yes, not knowing, wow, this is journey's end. This now is journey's end, and there's nowhere to go. To have that great insight, the wonderful irony of particularly in Zen, is the wonderful insight becomes something else that needs to be dropped. Something else that needs to be let go of. Inside the mind, outside the mind. Who's to say? Why do we fall for such traps? If something is inside or outside of the mind. We can just be ordinary. Why not just be our remarkable, ordinary selves? I'm going to pause and open it up for... I have the other mic for questions or comments. Okay, let's... thank you so much. Time flies as it always does. We're just a little past noon, so I'm going to read the closing dedication. Oh, I put it in the chat too. There we go. So it should be in the chat for you on Zoom as well. Great. Going forth into this world, so in need of light, may I bring all the kindness and wisdom I embody to each being and each situation that I meet. May the power of my practice today strengthen my resolve to be an agent of peace and justice in this world. Going forth together into this world, so in need of light, may we together bring all the kindness and wisdom we embody to each being and each situation that we meet. May the power of our practice today strengthen our resolve to be agents of peace and justice in this world. We dedicate our practice for the liberation of all beings, the great, the small, the wise, the ignorant, the powerful and the powerless. May all beings be liberated from sorrow and loss, hatred and injustice, scarcity and want, and every form of suffering. May our practice today be a prayer for peace, and may it benefit all beings without exception. Thank you, everyone. Please take good care. Hope to see you soon.